Hello again, dear listeners. This is Art Vander here for Art Speaks episode 2. I'm joined here today with my buff baby boy dog, Parker, as we explore a couple more discussions in art and in life, at least theory of it. So, we previously discussed an introduction of myself, my background, and a little bit of my experiences leading into my current state as an artist or creator, better yet. And that was quite a good place to leave off because I think it gave you a good idea of who I am and what motivates me when it comes to art, which is important. Um, but now I think we can take a respite from that for a moment and explore one of my findings as I have recently re entered the creative space, um, albeit online in a social media format. I've been sharing my work for the past 2 weeks now across the platforms of Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and I'm looking at YouTube, and I'm also, I dabble with Reddit. Not that I'm very big on that as a platform itself, but it can be quite um, a good forum to make genuine connections and speak with people. That's not completely lost there. And then there's DeviantArt and like Tumblr and sites like that that I'm kind of lesser interested in right now. And then even to a further extent, along with less interest, is the NFT stuff. I looked into it in the beginning. I was quite fascinated by it. Um, and so for the first few days, I was really picked up by the hype. I bought into the false sense of proprietorship that comes with minting an NFT. And so I figured out the basics and put up some art on some of the more reputable sites. But I quickly came to realize that a few things, a few takeaways, if you will, indulge me at least, is that there's a huge predatory market in the world of NFTs. In fact, since making myself public, I think I get several messages per day from scammers and fraudsters and NFT shills and shysters, a lot of them. I cannot report them quick enough, honestly. And I get the sense that all artists must be suffering the same deluge of just insincerity and fakeness. And there's clearly a market in it. There are clearly people suffering at the hands of these con artists, pun intended, um, for them to still be active in the community as they are, very prevalent. And I almost feel like there's a need for a watchdog uh, or some sort of improved measures of avoiding this because it's quite honestly, it's exhausting. Each message that comes in at this point, I'm approaching with a heavy sigh. Um, and That's not really the response that a message should invoke, but it is on account of all these scams. And so NFTs, I think, and the scammers were there before the NFT stuff. It's not direct correlation. Like, it's just relevancy, really, because NFTs are the next kind of big thing for them to bridge from. It's an easy way to try to get people to part from their money. So NFTs, and that's kind of bringing us full circle now because it's all about money, really. NFTs, at least from what I've seen, I went on to Exchange, I went on to OpenSea, I went on to Rarible, went on to all of those, and hell, I've even got a few minted on those sites, but at a cost, mind you. The process isn't cheap. It isn't a cheap or uh, entry level process to the everyman, to the latent members of society. It's not as easy as just putting up a post. I mean, it is, but it isn't. There's still quite a gap there. And I think that's the allure to some people already in the market, is that there's an exclusivity to it. There's like, oh, I've got these NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and that gives my art some inherent extra value, so I can mark up the price by 300% and try to sell it to people. I think the NFT thing has certainly had its sunrise and sunset moment for now. I never really like to say anything with certainty because the internet is anything but. Uh, is everything but, I should say. Correction. Um, but I don't really like it. I don't think I like it. No, I think the emotional response to it, my gut feeling, which I listen to quite deeply, is negative, because a lot of the purchases I was looking through, and now correct me if I'm wrong, uh, but a lot of the purchases are quite informed, and what I mean by that is that the art that is purchased and sold it's already circulating. It has been for a while, or it's part of a series that has been quite relevant, or there's some recognition to it. There's some sort of previous value that's already been established. Either some random purchased it for thousands of dollars or sold it, and so there's almost a recognition of value there, and so it's almost like trading. It's almost like these people are trading cryptos or stocks, but it's in the form of art. Which is why I say that it's very profit oriented. Which art shouldn't be purely. I mean, it can be, sure, treat it like that if you want, but it isn't for me. That's not what I'm about. That's not why I create art, and that's not why I view art either. Um, in fact, I kind of see that corporate entity, that profit mindset, as quite the antithesis to creativity. It's quite soul crushing. It drains the creativity out of us as beings. We're always pursuing the almighty dollar. To what extent? To our detriment. It often becomes an exercise in suffering for way longer than it should be. Um, and NFTs are just another part of that system. They're fueling, not always. Sometimes they're quite creative. I'm generalizing here again, of course, because there are times when you'll come across a piece that is just trying to be innovative for the sake of innovation or for the sake of creativity. And those pieces are worth something, sure. But then you see generative items, AI art or pixel art that's probably been thrown together in an hour or less. And so, you see these pieces and they're all quite similar. They're parts of series and collections that prey off people's either um, they prey off people's lack of understanding on the technology or their understanding of it. I know that doesn't leave a lot of room for comprehension or logic, but what I mean by that is that people who are in the industry are caught up with it. They're caught up in the NFT hype. They're caught up with the concept of validating a single unique piece of art on the blockchain that can be infinitely resold, um, providing royalties to the original creator, and of course, profits for the owners. And that's good and all, but you might as well be buying and selling stocks or cryptos at that point. It becomes a commodity. That's what the NFT market is to me. It's just a massive commodity swap. And so that brings us back down to my my experience with it, and that is this: there's no room for the small indie creators um, or the new artists, the unrecognized talent. There's not even really room for the recognized ones, mind you. The market is oversaturated and overhyped by these few circulating pieces that are overvalued as hell, um, and they're constantly bought and sold at losses or profits and losses and profits. And I'm sure there's even probably tax implications in there somewhere, but I won't explore that. My point is, NFTs are kind of they're a niche, but they're you're basically putting, if you want to make a living out of that, especially because it's been stigmatized now, along with a lot of cryptos, the whole crypto thing, whole blockchain technology has been stigmatized by these get rich quick, pump and dump types, where these businessmen, shallow, fake, in it for a quick buck, they'll just throw something up, sell it to a bunch of chumps, and bail. And it's worked. It has. It's worked for a lot of people. And a lot of other people have seen that and they've gone into it and they've done the same thing. And then we've just got this whole sea of copycats, and a cycle of repetition of just trying to sucker uh, people out of their money. And I think that's ultimately what NFTs are right now. It would be nice if they became more, but looking at the state of the industry, you've got people selling virtual real estate on there, you've got people selling gifts and pixel art for tens of thousands of dollars, and hundreds of editions of the same thing. I think it certainly tailors to a certain demographic that I'm not in, and I'm not hating on that demographic. I'm hating on the predators in that demographic, the people that prey on others and try to just make a profit from it. That greed stance, I certainly am against that. But just from the people who are just doing it because they enjoy it for some reason, or the people that are just in it to, I guess, create art in a new format, in a new way, I respect that. That's fine. Um, it's it's very similar to another point that I made not long ago between physical and digital media. People often see digital media as the lesser or inferior form of art, but really, it's two sides of the same coin. It's just different. It isn't so much about the tools that are used. to create the piece. It's about the creator, and it's the same analogy as, like, it's not the car, it's the driver. I mean, sure, it's circumstantial at best, because are we talking about a sprint? Are we talking about a marathon? Are we talking about a race? Are we talking about a derby? Sure. But ultimately, when you bring it back down to its most simplistic form, which is what I enjoy doing, its most minimal aspect, um, NFTs are for a very certain type of creator base and a very certain type of consumer base. And I think it's just going to constantly be like that until it either shrinks into obscurity once again, or blows up into the mainstream and becomes some sort of permanent fixture um, to the art house, you know. Uh, but yeah, so that was my little rant on NFTs. I'm against them um, ideologically, to some extent, to some surface level. I'm not really in support of that. Uh, hype, hypocritically, I have some, um, which kind of regrettably, really, I'd pull them down if they didn't cost me something to put up, but they're just kind of there now in the ether space, pun intended, until their listings end. But I won't be renewing that, and I won't really be actively promoting it. In fact, any hint toward NFTs, I've strayed away from, because I don't really like um, the inclination, or the kind of reputation that it would bring with me. But anyway, moving on. So that was one of the big issues. But then there was the scammer and kind of um, fraud aspect to social media as well, which I've been dealing with each day. Um, but then there is a glimmer of light. There is a silver lining to some of this, because there's been a handful of genuine engagements I've had with fellow creators and art lovers, and that was nice. Um, Mostly on, funny enough, it was on the platform I least expected it on, and the platform that I was most reluctant to use, which is TikTok, because TikTok's a very video-centric platform, and so as someone that makes still art most of the time, uh, I found it awkward just to post those. I found it kind of a format to do it in, more like a slideshow type deal, which works. It works, but I didn't really expect to get a lot of traction on that. But I think it's my most successful platform thus far, which kind of tells me something about the platforms in general. I think a lot of them are becoming very moderated toward geared toward, like, uh, advertising. And what I mean by that is that it's like a pay to win type thing. I find that the algorithms now, I'm not that I'm really that, like, I can't really speak. It's hypothetical here, but it's just the sense that I'm getting, um, compared to, years ago when I occasionally used social media back then. Um, these platforms, Instagram, Twitter, um, Instagram especially, Instagram is really bad to grow on. I mean, the hashtags and the algorithm seems better, for at least putting your art in front of new people, but the ability to grow and share is much more narrow, and their moderation is a lot more strict. I was trying to follow a bunch of artists that I was following on Twitter, and whereas Twitter allowed me to do it to a much greater extent. When I did on Instagram, I got like a restriction, a temporary restriction of some sort, and so I wasn't allowed to follow as many people in such a short time. Now I get the restriction, I do. I get that um, it's limiting like spam bots and in fact, the very nasty things we were talking about before with the scammers, sure. But I think as a new account or as a new creator, people are gonna find it hard to grow if they don't already have a established fan base or audience there to follow them right away. Twitter, Twitter's like a mixed bag, because Twitter, the hashtags seem to work less so, but you're able to faster and more consistent rate. I think I can probably occasionally follow people a few times a day to some extent. I was reading an article the other day on this, and it was quite disappointing actually, because it suggested, I don't know if it's true, I'd have to double check, but it was saying that you can, there's a limit, there's like a soft cap on how many people you can actually follow before it completely stops. Um, and I think that's 5,000. Now, if that is true, which I hope it isn't, but if it is, um, that's quite. That's what I mean by pay to win. Like, I say that because it's an excellent example of how the whole platform isn't really about growing. It's not about growth for the small creator anymore. Because you could share as much as you want, and your numbers could dwindle. It's about throwing money into the platform and they will push that in front of people. But then that's not how you want to grow as a creator. You want to grow organically, not through pushed ads and not through forced dynamics. People, they pull away from that. They can already censor dishonesty or a disingenuine connection. Ads never work. I mean, they work for exposure. Marketing is one of the biggest, if not the biggest aspect to business. It's how you recognize a brand, it's why you choose them. So I'm not discounting that because I think it's crucially important how a brand is seen. And that's why businesses throw millions of dollars into marketing firms every year. Sure, there is a validity to that. But I would say that as this is especially important for smaller creators or new people going into it. It would absolutely not have the same effect. I can almost guarantee if you throw hundreds or thousands of dollars into marketing and you're pushing ads of your work as a creative, especially because art isn't really a consumable. It's more. I mean, yes, you can buy canvas prints, which I sell, and yes, you can buy posters, which I also sell. Shameless plug. Um, but my point being, it's not so much a generic consumable. So to advertise that is just it's a grey area and it's quite difficult. So I don't think there's a lot of room for creators there. I think they need to rework their platforms to tailor to artists differently, to businesses and to just standard users, because I think there's quite a neglect there. And yes, to those who are thinking, oh well, maybe you should move on to art-oriented social medias like Pinterest. I do agree. I do. I've got a Pinterest there, and I've been slowly sharing to it, but I think Pinterest is going to suffer the same sort of issues really, because there's already quite an established art frame there. There are boards that people can follow and that will spit out relevant artists and artworks, and then they just follow those and what have you. But for the new person going into it, again, it's going to be tough because it's a lot of consistent posting, it's a lot of consistent sharing and connecting with other people, and other boards, pinning other people's work and them pinning yours, and just et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the social media uh, aspect. But TikTok is a bit of an outlier, purely because of the way that it treats. Well, at first it seemed quite random because my first few posts were getting pushed in front of hundreds of people, and I thought, oh wow, this is really good. I haven't posted at all, and it's getting a lot of recognition. But then it dwindled after a while, and then it spikes occasionally. It dwindles, and I thought, well, maybe it was related to the type of music that I'm using or the hashtags, and I experimented and everything, but ultimately it had not really any bearing on the viewership. The numbers were consistent, um, and the metric was quite good too because it was across hundreds of art pieces that I have uploaded so far. Um, and so it's not like there wasn't really a good test category there for it. And so I'm yet to fully understand because keep in mind that back in business school, I did a lot of social media has changed a lot, but back then we did like a whole subject on marketing and social media, and back then hashtags seemed to be a lot more uh, relevant and impactful. But now I think it's less about the hashtags and more about the engagement, like the impressions and kind of the ratio. And so it will measure what kind of engagement you're getting in the first insert time here, so to speak, um, and then base the rest of your posts on that. I could be wrong. I could be. I'm just spitballing again, but it just seems to be quite um, yeah, generalized and very consistent in that pattern as well. So I'm sure there is an algorithm there feeding into it. But again, we will continue pushing forward, and hopefully there's no like sort of soft caps there for growth. Because I think TikTok is the best in terms of the three at least. And there is like Facebook and stuff, but I wouldn't really give that a lot of credence because Facebook itself is a whole different demographic to tap into and a whole different approach really that you have to treat it with. And there's the groups and the communities, and I would say, without sounding cliche, it would be probably more older focused as well, whereas a youthful kind of community would be on TikTok. And so uh, there's that. Um, and, with all that said, I'm hoping to kind of tap into a new audience itself, really, with these logs. Yeah, so I'm hoping to tap into a new type of audience, or at least encourage the existing one, small as that may be, um, and help develop more of a connection. Um, because there's a lot of ways you can build trust and synergy between your audience and yourself as an artist. Um, and that's especially true when you're a physical artist, and you've got physical places and physical mediums to share. In fact, I would say that's easier because those relationships can lead to conversions of your art, profits, appreciation, uh, showcases, exhibits, stuff like that. There's just a lot more. The potential is a lot more based on where you are rather than what you are or what you're doing. So the requirement of actual engagement and effort is slightly lower. Not to discount it, but I would say that if you were to pair the two up intrinsically, the physical outlet would be more beneficial short term, uh, possibly long term too. It just depends really how depends on a lot of factors. Some of it luck, some of it hard, strenuous work. Um, just about how many people see your work, how many people enjoy it, share it, like it. Um, and so online, there's kind of a facade going on. There's a war between the viewership and the creator. You have no idea who's creating this content for you, and oftentimes people don't really care. There's not really any second thought into it. They don't care. Who's making these memes or who's making these um trend videos. They come and go quick, um like the wind or something. But with an artist, because the work is a lot more personal, and the commitment required is different. If you were to buy something, or if you were to fund them somehow, donations or commissions or whatever, um, it kind of is more an act of, I don't want to say generosity, because that implies pity, or at least empathy. Uh, that implies some sort of sympathy or empathy toward the work or the creator. No, it's more an act of interest. It's renewed interest. You have to be invested in that work in order to pay for it. Um, this kind of falls back into the whole consumerist type thing, and maybe even the consumer mindset, really. But art itself is kind of more of a want rather than a need. Um, it's more of a leisurely kind of practice over like a practical one. Um, and so I think that's a good place to kind of leave it on, because I think in the next episode we will kind of dive into more about. We'll kind of start to look at my art, because I know that I've been alluding to that um, from the first episode. But we'll look at my art, and then maybe we'll even kind of dive into the impact that art has had on me, and also just uh, on the internet in general, really, and kind of how I fit in with that. But for now, we will leave it at that. It's clocked over just half an hour, so thank you for your time and your ears, and I hope that you've taken away something valuable from this. From this. Until next time, good night.